The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win, banksjones.com.
The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free. Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
What do you want? Some drama heading into the Tennessee-Georgia game as if you needed it? Well, we got it for you. Welcome to the program as we are loaded for bear today and looking forward to tackling a ton of issues. Yes, the Tennessee-Georgia game will be paramount among those topics as we'll discuss whether or not Nico Iamaleava will play against Georgia. I'll give you the latest news on that I have heard. Also, you have Kirby Smart calling one of his players an idiot, and I don't really blame him. The College Football Playoff Committee released its most recent rankings, and Caleb thinks it's terrible for the Vols. Also coming up on the program will be the stat of the day, this day in Tennessee sports history. Austin Mock will join us, has the best last name ever for a guy who does mock playoffs. Get it? So he does his mock playoff projections. We'll call him the Big Mock. Austin Mock from The Athletic will join us. We'll talk about where Tennessee could end up in the college football playoff, the inaugural 12-team playoff. Surely it will include the Vols. Or maybe not. Caleb has concern. Oklahoma gives the dreaded vote of confidence to Brent Venables. Why are Caleb and I the only two that saw the demise of Brent Venables coming sooner rather than later? 5 balls to watch as Tennessee takes on Georgia. And the Lady Vols pick up commitment and hold off MTSU, but it wasn't the prettiest thing in the world. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, Banks & Jones. Caleb Calhoun, how are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you doing, Dave?
Never better, because we got this guy right here. Jimmy Hyams joins us. His appearance brought to you by our friends at Ray Varner Ford, and we absolutely love our friends at Ray Varner Ford. We'll tell you more about them. Local you trust. Innovation you can afford. RayVarnerFord.com. Jimmy Hyams, how are you, sir?
Dave, I'm doing very well. Thank you.
Let me ask you this. I'll put the over-under at 15.5. How many times have you been asked if Nico is going to play this week?
Over.
easy over. Yeah, I have too. I did a radio show in Memphis, by the way. I gave Caleb a shout out because it's one of his favorite radio stations, but I was asked that as well. And let's just go ahead and dive right into it because I'm gonna go with the over as well. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. It's our poll question. It's pretty simple. It has to do with Nico Iamaleava.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
All right, Jimmy, I'll just ask you just point blank. Will Nico play on Saturday? If you had to bet a mortgage payment, where would you go?
First off, I wouldn't bet a mortgage payment, but I do think he's going to play. But it's just a guess. How do we know? Tennessee's playing it close to the vest. I don't want to say anything. They're giving every indication that he is going to play. Now, we all know that concussions vary. You can be fine in 24 hours, and maybe it takes you 24 days. There's no one size fits all for a concussion. So that's what makes it so difficult to project. And I know somebody said, what are the symptoms? Well, the symptoms are dizziness. If you can't follow somebody when they do their finger like this, if you have headaches, if you're having difficulty answering questions like, what is your name? There are a lot of symptoms of a concussion. So I've been there. I know it. I had a bunch of them in high school, so I know what that's like. But again, they're all different. Now, I'll say this. Do I think he had a concussion? I think. I don't know. I think. Do I also think he hurt his shoulder? Yes. So I think it's both. And I also think if he plays against Georgia, he's not going to be 100%, in part because of the shoulder. But if I had to bet, which I wouldn't, I would say he's going to play.
Caleb will bet on anything. So, Caleb, would you bet that he's going to play?
I actually wouldn't at this point. And Dave, I'll let you lead this, but should we bring up the reports from two credible sources across two different networks from what we heard yesterday?
Let's do that. So Adam Sparks reported that he was at practice yesterday, Jimmy. And then you've got the Bear, who I don't know how newsworthy that is, the guy on ESPN's College Game Day, saying that he's got from a good source that he won't play. But again, that's a guy that goes by the Bear. So you take that for what it's worth. Pete Thamel, who I do respect greatly, he reported on Twitter that he's in concussion protocol and it is still up in the air. Now, even Caleb doesn't know this because I talked to somebody right before the show. I was told that he has passed the preliminary protocols in terms of a concussion and that it's likely to play. But Jimmy, I'm like you. I wouldn't bet my mortgage on it.
Yeah, and it's the element of the unknown. And like I said, all these concussions are different. And typically, if you've had one, the second one could be worse. Just look at Tua Tagovailoa. Okay, that's a pretty good example out there. But we just don't know the extent of this. And Tennessee said it held Nico out for precautionary measures against Mississippi State. Okay. Does that mean he could have gone back in the game? I don't know if that's what it means. But I just think it's hard to project this, and you're not going to get any answers. Look, I'm going to guess that when the availability report comes out Wednesday night, that it's going to say probable. That's my guess. Now, if he's not on it at all, that means that he should play. But we also know that thing changes from Wednesday to Thursday to Friday to 90 minutes before kickoff. We'll know he won't play if he's not on the plane and goes. But if I'm Tennessee, whether he's playing or not, he's on the plane. Because I don't want Georgia to have any additional advantage in regard to whether he plays or not.
All right, Caleb, I want you to jump in here. Portions of the program brought to you by our friends of Hound Dogs of Knoxville. Champions look good in orange. hdknoxville.com. hdknoxville.com. Caleb?
Jimmy, so I want to go through each of these, I want to quote these verbatim who we just brought up, and I want to play the Bear clip for you. And then I just want to know who you think is the most credible of these, because we know Josh Heupel doesn't have a history of telling the truth on injuries.
No.
So,
no coaches do.
That is true. So Heupel says Monday, Nico was at practice with us. We expect him on Saturday. But then he says, wait till the injury report. Pete Thamel comes in. He also said that Gaston Moore had been taking first team reps. Then Pete Thamel comes out. His exact tweet was, Nico Iamaleava is in concussion protocol. He did dress in practice on Tuesday, and his status for Georgia is undetermined. Now, this is what I'm going to go ahead and pull up what the Bear said real quick. His actual name is Chris Fallica, and he is a gambling expert. So he
used to be on ESPN.
Yeah, he did. He did used to be on ESPN.
Yeah.
And for those who are curious, if anybody has inside info, it might be him, because his whole shtick is gambling, and we've wondered why Vegas set the line for Tennessee, Georgia at 10. This is what he said just yesterday.
And that being said, I don't know what you have heard about Nico Iamaleava playing this week. I have heard that it was a bad concussion, and people that I've spoken to do not believe that he is going to play. We'll see what happens. Josh Heupel certainly offered a different tune, as you would expect him to do early in the week, to probably just have Georgia prepare as if Nico were going to play, have the college football playoff selection committee prepare to rank them as they were going to have their starting quarterback for this game. So I mean, look, maybe my intel is wrong, and maybe he is fine, and hopefully for his sake and the health of him in the long-term future, I hope that it wasn't a bad concussion.
So,
right. Jimmy, that doesn't exude confidence to me, the Bears report.
You mean confidence in him?
Confidence in his report. It was kind of like he danced around. He kind of said, if my intel could be wrong and that sort of thing. I came up working for you, you were my mentor, and I've never heard you dance around something quite like he did. I don't know how much stock I put in that, in other words.
Okay, so you don't have confidence in his report, in him, what he's saying. Okay,
Correct.
I don't either. Okay, so I know who this guy is. I followed him on ESPN. Pretty much every year when he was doing the odds and picking the spread, he was below 500. Most of the time he was below 40%. I also thought, well, he's not very good at that. And then I saw him doing horse racing. And there was a Kentucky Derby, and he picked the top 4 horses, and none of them finished in the top 4. So I don't have a lot of faith in
Jimmy just totally tears down the Bears.
He just put the bear down.
If his picking of the spread is any worse than his reporting, I don't trust him. And why would he know something that we don't? So I don't put any stock in what he said. I do
because
think
he had the so intelligent Jim Donnan on his podcast, and we know.
Speaking of somebody that's suffering from concussion-like symptoms, Jim Donnan.
Well, back to your question, I would trust Pete Thamel more. Now, I will say this: because Nico's at practice doesn't mean he practiced. Okay, so you got to pay attention closely to the wording. He was at practice. So what? That doesn't mean he practiced. So that doesn't give you any clue at all, in my opinion. So this could end up being a game time decision where Tennessee, 90 minutes before the game, declares whether he's in or out. But I'm not going to sit here and profess to know how severe, how significant the concussion was. I don't know. And I bet you there's only a handful of people that do know. And I would bet you none of them are in the media.
I would go so far as to say this, Jimmy. I don't know that Josh Heupel or Nico knows as of right now.
I would tend to agree with you because he's got a clear concussion protocol. Now, who has to clear him? It's usually team doctors. And in rare occasions, team doctors are not going to put their reputation on the line most of the time. Now, I've questioned sometimes if you work for an NFL team and there's so many dollars on the line, you might have some fudging going on there. They certainly did it with CTE, right, years ago. Mm-hmm. But I know who Tennessee's team doctors are. I think they're above board, and I don't think they're going to risk Nico's health by playing him if they know he should or is under concussion protocol.
Jimmy, it's been, if we want to talk about Tua, who has gone through this concussion situation, 3 times now? I think a lot of that is his decision whether or not to play, and it's my understanding that he makes $165 million if the NFL or the Miami Dolphins say he can no longer play. He doesn't make that money if he pulls himself out. But if I'm Josh Heupel too, I know this is a big game. I know it could determine whether or not they make the college football playoff, but you wouldn't want your reputation as a recruiter, and I know I always go back to recruiting, of worst case scenario, he goes out there, takes a hit, and he's stumbling off the field and looks like Tua's look. That would be bad for the Vols.
No, I think you're right. I think it would be a recruiting, something in recruiting that would be used by opponents of Tennessee. Look what they did to their quarterback. Look how they handled him. Now, in the NFL, you can get away with it, right? Because you're not recruiting. You're drafting. But, yeah, I think that's a fair point because you know that their teams will be out there. Now, would that change the mind of McIntyre, who's committed to him? Would it change the mind of the quarterback the next year that's committed to him? What's his name, Faison? I don't know. But you know that schools would use that in recruiting against Tennessee. The Tennessee doesn't care about their players. It doesn't matter how hurt you are. They're going to roll you out there and play you. But to me, that's not under consideration. What should be under consideration is Nico healthy enough to play? If he's still in concussion protocol, he should not play, and there should not be any gray area about this. He either is ready to play or he's not.
Caleb, I want you to take over here. Jimmy's appearance brought to you by our friends at Ray Varner Ford.
2024 Ford Maverick XLT all-wheel drive, $31,990. 23 Ford Expedition 4x4 Limited, $66,590. 2023 Ford F-150 XLT Super Crew 4x4, $47,995. Ray Varner.
All right, Caleb, go.
All right, so Jimmy, we talked about this with John yesterday, and I just want to throw this out there. I think I lean your way too that Nico Iamaleava is probably going to play. If he doesn't, can Tennessee still beat Georgia with Gaston Moore quarterback?
No. I know that a lot of people were all excited about the way Gaston Moore played against Mississippi State in the second half. The best thing he did was draw pass interference penalties. What he throw?
By underthrowing passes.
He threw for 38 yards. Remember the first play against Alabama? He threw an interception into coverage. I think he is a serviceable backup quarterback who could beat Mississippi State and some other teams on their schedule. He's not going to go to Athens and beat Georgia. So I would be shocked if he did. So I would give Tennessee very little chance to beat Georgia with Gaston Moore. And look, there's a reason he's a backup. He's still a walk-on, isn't he?
Technically, yes.
I believe so, yeah.
So I know that there's some people that want to look at signs and say, hey, look what he did. I mean, he did this against Mississippi State. And remember, Mississippi State's the worst team in the SEC with the worst defense in the SEC. So that didn't really move the needle for me.
It didn't me either. And I've heard the same thing that you have, but people saying, "Oh, he played pretty well." I didn't see that. I don't know if some people watched a different game than me. I just thought he played fine. I didn't see anything that made me believe he could go to Athens. Let me play devil's advocate just for the sake of it, Jimmy. This team can run the football at a high level. This team has an elite defense. Mm-hmm. Those two things tend to travel. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to say that, even though I agree with you, that's the way that Tennessee can beat Georgia with Gaston Moore.
It would be. It would be. Now, I'll say this. In my opinion, if Gaston Moore is the quarterback, Georgia does not have to respect the passing game as much. Therefore, they can load the box. And they're still pretty good against the run. They're not as good as they've been, but they only give up 110 yards per game. If Tennessee gets 110 yards rushing against Georgia, they got no chance. But I'll go back to this. Georgia's not going to give you numbers in the box if Gaston Moore's the quarterback. They're going to take their chances with some single coverage. And I don't know how much zone or man they're going to play. Typically, play man. But if you can't throw the football and you can't be a threat in the passing game, then it makes it that much harder to run the football, doesn't it? So you're right. Defense travels, run game travels typically. But I think it only travels if you've got a quarterback that's a passing threat.
I say what? If I'm Georgia, I'm preparing to stop the run, even if Nico trots out there, because I'm going to challenge him to beat me in the passing game, because I think the only way I can lose if Nico is not 100%, let's say it's shoulder and he passes protocol, is with the running game, whether or not it's Gaston or a banged up Nico.
Yeah, I agree with you. Georgia's number one priority defensively is to stop the run, to try to make Tennessee one-dimensional. And I think we would agree in the passing game, Nico's a bigger threat. And with his legs, he's a bigger threat than Gaston Moore. Now, I'll say this. I don't expect a whole lot of points in this game either. I think this is going to be a defensive battle. What was the Georgia-Kentucky score? 13-12? Mm-hmm. I don't think we'll see many more points than that. Because I don't think Carson Beck's playing worth a flip, and I don't know that Nico's going to be that effective even if he does play. So I'm looking for a low-scoring game.
All right, let's turn to the college football playoff as Caleb was up in arms last night when the rankings were announced. What the H?
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
All right, Caleb, I'm just going to turn this over to you and toss this out to Jimmy, as he might think you're on something. What the H today brought to you by the Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Use the promo code HOOK for 10% off. Caleb, why do you think that the college football playoff rankings that came out last night could doom the Vols?
Well, I think they could doom the Vols because of moving Indiana ahead of them. I wanted to talk in general about the inconsistencies about the college football playoff rankings, Jimmy. And I just want to know your thoughts on this. How much of a joke are they? And I'm not saying that because they didn't move Tennessee up after Georgia lost. That's fine. I get it if you want to do that. But how could you have Tennessee ahead of Indiana and BYU last week? And Indiana over the weekend beats Michigan, who we all agree is not that good of a team. And BYU wins by 1 point against a Utah team that's on what? Its 17th string quarterback right now?
You got a bad call to do it.
Yeah, exactly. And you bump BYU and Indiana over Tennessee? How do you rationalize that at all? There's no way you could see Indiana and BYU. If you don't go by margin of victory and you just go by resume and schedule strength, there's no way you could leapfrog them over Tennessee from this past weekend. And if you go by eye test, there's still no way you could leapfrog them over Tennessee from this past weekend, unless you're saying you were wrong with your rankings last week. Isn't that the case?
Yeah, I did hear somebody say the BYU ranking was a correction from the week before. But apparently you did not notice that Indiana's strength of schedule went from 103 to 100.
I stand corrected. They still haven't beaten a team with a winning record all year.
That didn't convince you? Come on now. And when you say everybody agrees Michigan's not very good, apparently the committee doesn't see it that way. They must think this is the Michigan team from a year ago. Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. It doesn't. I'll say this too in regard to that. And I'm going to say probably agrees with you, although I don't want to speak necessarily for him. Matt Stenscombe spoke to the Knoxville Quarterback Club Monday, and he said Tennessee, Georgia's elimination game. Georgia loses, 3 losses, they're gone. Tennessee with 2 losses, they're out. Now, his rationale, the committee's in love with the Big Ten. And the Big Ten is going to get 4 teams in. And now, I don't agree with him because too many other things could happen. For example, what if the ACC and the Big 12 only get 1 team in? That opens the door for another SEC team, right? So I don't completely agree with what he said if Tennessee loses, because we don't know the other losses that may occur with other teams that are vying for a spot in the playoff. While I don't agree with it, his point is the committee loves the Big Ten, and he thinks Tennessee will get hosed if Tennessee loses to Georgia.
Here are my thoughts on it, Jimmy. I think that it's a television show. And I think there was a reason Tennessee was number 1 before they played Georgia in 2022. I think it was better to say the number 1 team travels to Athens to take on the Georgia Bulldogs. I think it was good theater. So I don't place any importance in any of the rankings other than the last one. I could see everything going chalk and then flip-flopping a couple of other teams for next week. I think it gets people talking, and whether we want to go back to who is the national champion in 1987, college football more than any other sport has been about talk. It's been about talking about things other than what happened on the field. So I think they're playing us.
Well, that's a heck of a conspiracy theory. I don't really think that. I don't think that the 13 members of the committee are saying, "Hey, let's do this for TV rankings." I don't think that. Here's the thing too. When I was watching TV the other day over the weekend, they were putting the rankings of the teams. The rankings of the team were the AP poll, not the college football playoff poll. The ones I watched.
Right.
So doesn't that defeat the purpose? If you're trying to get people to watch a game because of the ranking, and then on TV, they're ranking a team 8th instead of 5th, then what good has that done you? Right?
I don't know. Our policy at Off the Hook Sports is once the college football rankings come out that we use those numbers instead of the AP, Caleb. But I wasn't really sure what to write about Tennessee on Monday because I didn't know whether or not to use the AP or wait for the college football playoff.
Yeah. So looking at the rankings out, if the season ended today, Tennessee would be the number 8 seed hosting a number 9 seed Notre Dame. By the way, whatever else you think about these rankings, that would be an epic showdown. Notre Dame coming to Neyland Stadium in December would just be TV gold, which does Jimmy fuel Dave's conspiracy that it's a TV show because they would want that. But Boise State would be the last one out. I'm sorry, Georgia would be the last one out because Boise State would get the automatic bid. Do you think, Jimmy, that here, let me ask you something that's a little scary with these rankings. Tennessee and Texas, let me throw out Texas, who's all the way up at number 3. If Texas loses to Texas A&M at the end of the year, Shouldn't they, and there's a cluster of 10-2 SEC teams. Shouldn't Texas be the team left out, given the fact that they have the worst schedule of any SEC team by far that's 10-2, save for maybe Missouri?
You know, what's interesting about Texas is I was reading the other day where Texas' best win of the year at Vanderbilt.
Yeah, I said that yesterday. Yeah.
Whoa, you won at Michigan, but winning at Vanderbilt is a bigger win than winning at Michigan, which says something about the Big Ten and Michigan. Oh, by the way. Could Texas be left out? They could be. Now, is their schedule any weaker than Tennessee's? Look, I know Michigan isn't that good, but NC State isn't any good either. And Oklahoma's not what we thought they were. So I don't know where the ranking of their schedule is. Maybe you do. I haven't looked at that. Where is Tennessee's schedule ranked? I don't know, versus Michigan. I saw them ranked recently, 2 or so weeks ago, at like 58 in the country. But I don't know where Michigan is. I do know where Indiana is. I know their schedule sucks. And they're getting a lot. See, and here's the thing, too. Going forward, a lot of people say, well, you need to make sure you play a tough schedule because they look at the strength of schedule. Well, if they do, why is Indiana ranked as high as Indiana is? Look at their schedule.
I'm going to be honest. I could be wrong on this, but I think if Indiana loses to Ohio State this weekend, they're out. I don't think the college football
completely.
I think the college football playoff committee is saying you guys can't go, and so we'll see how that goes.
Well,
but I don't.
Here's the thing: if Ohio State beats them 45-7, I agree with you. If Ohio State beats them 34-31, I'm not so sure. I don't think just losing. I think it's how you lose, which also plays into Tennessee. If Tennessee loses to Georgia by 30 points, Tennessee is going to be out. If Tennessee loses 20-17, then I think the committee considers that. They do consider how you perform even in a loss.
It's a great point.
So can I just so I just wanted to bring this up real quick because Dave, you were asking about strength of schedule. It depends on how you format strength of schedule. Do you value road games? Do you value how you play in your games, margin of victory with other teams, things like that? But based on the FPI, which does take a lot of this into account, Tennessee's is at number 35 and Texas is at number 56. Now Tennessee's is second to last in the third from last in the SEC. Yeah. But it is still significantly better than Texas. Nobody's as bad as Missouri's strength of schedule. Worst strength of schedule of all time for an SEC team.
Yeah, and they don't deserve to be in it. Although Eli Drinkwood said they're still in the playoff race. He said, "Let's go, Eli." But yeah, with Tennessee now, so Tennessee's got Georgia. That's going to boost their strength of schedule. The strength of schedule you mentioned is who you've played up to date, right? Not Correct. Your future. So right. UTEP's going to hurt them. Vanderbilt is not going to hurt them. I don't know how much it'll help them, but it won't hurt them. So in Texas, we'll end up playing Texas A&M. That will help Texas. But what do they have? But Arkansas, Kentucky, those won't help them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Tennessee will probably end up with a tougher strength of schedule than Texas.
Jimmy, back to Matt Stinchcom's point. If you had a bet, again, we won't even make it a mortgage payment. We'll say an electrical payment. But if you had to do that, how many teams from the Big Ten and the SEC do you think will make the 12-team college football playoff?
4 and 4.
I do too. Now, I want to ask you which 4 those will be after a quick message from our friend Medicare Misty. It's open enrollment time. Medicare Misty, over 40 states. That's what she's licensed in and no charge to you.
I've been in business actually 19 years this year. I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
And we call him Jimmy Hyams. Jimmy, if you had to bet the 4 teams that make the college football playoff, and I know we don't know what's happened in Tennessee, Georgia yet, but if you were to bet the 4 teams that make the college football playoff from the SEC, who would it be?
Texas, Tennessee, Georgia. I'm struggling between Ole Miss and Alabama. Ole Miss beat Georgia worse than Alabama did. Ole Miss.
Caleb, what are your thoughts on the four? I'm actually the Jimmy on all four of those.
Well, see, I'm breaking with both you guys because I think 5 teams from the SEC are going to go.
You got Alabama.
And the reason I think that is I don't think any more than one team from the Big 12 or the ACC is going. Now, the only caveat to that, guys, is if BYU goes undefeated and then Colorado upsets BYU in the Big 12 title, which very well could happen. Colorado's good enough to do that. They might put both of them in, but otherwise, I think only one Big 12 team is going. And so with that in mind, I think it's going to be Texas, Tennessee, Alabama, Ole Miss, and Georgia. Yeah, and then Clemson's going to be the odd one out. Well, I will say this, one quick caveat. I think Texas A&M has a very good chance to beat Texas later in the year. And if that happens, I think Texas will be the one left out and Texas A&M goes.
Let me make sure I heard you. You think if Colorado wins the Big 12, 2 Big 12 teams get in?
If say BYU goes undefeated, because the committee has kind of made it clear they're not going to count conference championship week losses against you compared to other teams that didn't play conference championship week. That's kind of their philosophy.
Okay. All right. I got you. Okay.
So if BYU's undefeated and ahead of Tennessee going into conference championship week and Tennessee doesn't play in their conference title and BYU loses theirs, they'll stay ahead of Tennessee, but Colorado will get an automatic bid for winning the Big 12.
Yeah. I know what the College Football Player Selection Committee said. I don't believe them.
Fair enough.
All right. Let's say Colorado beats BYU 40-0. How are you going to put BYU in?
I agree with you on that. That's a great point.
I don't believe the committee. I think they would have egg on their face if they did that, and they know it. So I don't believe them.
Jimmy's appearance brought to you by our friends at Ray Varner Ford. Ray Varner Ford local. You trust innovation you can afford. RayVarnerFord.com. Jimmy, have a blessed day, sir. We will talk to you soon. Look forward to your prediction on the Tennessee-Georgia game. Are you going to have a caveat if Nico plays or not, or how are you going to dance around that one?
Yeah, there'll be an asterisk. The Nico plays, Nico doesn't. Actually, no, I'm not going to change my pick whether he plays or not. I know who I'm going to pick.
Ooh, the tease. I love it. Coming up on Off the Hook Sports. Where else can we follow your work, Jimmy Hyams?
On the Rewind. So that's on, you can find it on YouTube. One of the easiest ways to do it, go to YouTube and then type in my name. You'll find the interviews. I just interviewed yesterday Jamal Lewis. Had a really, really good interview with him. We're going to launch it Thursday, and the timing of it is he had his breakout game against Georgia when he was a freshman. Georgia ended up not offering him. They went after Jasper Sanks. And then when they realized Sanks couldn't make it academically, they went after Jamal Lewis, and Lewis wasn't falling for that. But he was terrific. We had a great interview with him, and he opened up about a number of things. And so I certainly hope folks will listen to that one because he was outstanding. Talking about his days now part 2 is going to be his NFL career and how he grew up a big fan of Jim Brown, and you will be stunned at the similarities between Jim Brown and Jamal Lewis.
I'll tell you this too, and this may be a reach, guys, and I'm sorry to keep you too long, Jimmy. I stood next to Peyton Lewis in July for an interview that just kind of an impromptu interview, and physically, that's the only guy that I've stood next to that reminded me of Jamal Lewis.
Okay.
I'm not saying he's as good because Jamal ran for 2,000 yards, only one of 7 or 8 people in the NFL.
Yeah, when he did it, he was one of 5. Okay. But he also ran a 4.33 in the 40. Now, he told me, I'll give this out information. He told me he was about a 4.55, and then he went to a speed trainer before the pro day, and he got him down to a 4.33, and that certainly elevated his stock. But he was a great NFL running back. He played 9 years before he retired. Who else played 9 years before they retired? Jim Brown.
There you go.
There are a lot of similarities in the two that I find fascinating.
We've hit two Georgia coaches today because the Bear was on with Jim Donnan and Jamal Lewis was passed over by Ray Goff. Which of those geniuses would you want leading your program?
None of the above. Is that enough?
Hey, Jimmy, what year did I think I was reporting for you? Yes, it would have been for you. And I went to the pro day, and you know how people say, oh, that guy was really fast in his 40-yard dash time, but you really can't tell difference in tenths of a second. The one guy that I looked at and I said, oh my gosh, that's really fast. And I didn't even need to hear 4.32 was Jamal Lewis. And the interesting part about that is his entire family was on one of those overhangs in the facility, and they knew it too, because they knew they just became millionaires, and they all started cheering. And I just remember thinking, I don't consider myself a talent evaluator, so to speak, but that huge guy just moved faster than everybody else.
Yeah. I mean, it allowed him to be drafted as high as he was. There were some other pretty good running backs in that draft, which Jamal talked about. But if he was a 4.55, I'm not sure the Ravens would have taken him as a number 5 overall pick of the draft. So while the family was cheering, I also think they went to the ATM real fast.
Oh yeah.
No, that was that definitely made him a lot of money. But you know what? He earned it. Here's another odd stat about him. You know how many yards he rushed for as a freshman at Tennessee? 1,364. You know how many yards he rushed for with the Ravens as a rookie? 1,364.
Really?
I thought that was an odd coincidence.
And he was really the whole offense with him, and Shannon Sharp were the entire offense with the Ravens that year, because that was when they won the Super Bowl.
They won the Super Bowl, and he was the youngest player to ever play and win a Super Bowl at that time. I think that's still true, but at that time that was the case. So anyway, he was fascinating. He was great. And I hope that folks will tune in to our podcast on YouTube, Full Disclosure Productions, and also The Rewind is what it's called. So please check it out. But I was really happy with it, because I didn't know if he would open up as much as he did with me, and he did. So I appreciated that.
He typically doesn't. So good for you. I wrote a book about it, and he didn't. So it sounds like you got more than I did. Great job, Jimmy. We appreciate you. We'll talk to you next week, and look forward to your prediction column coming up here in the next day or so.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Caleb. Y'all have a great day.
Jimmy's the best. Coming up, we will have the stat of the day. Now, let's go with this day in Tennessee sports history. Brought to you by Banks & Jones. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win.
Oh, technical difficulties. Play it again, Dave.
That's all right. Let's do this. Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. Banks & All right, we certainly appreciate Banks & Jones, and they bring you this day in Tennessee sports history. What do you got for me, Caleb, as it is November the 13th, 2024?
On this day, 14 years ago, Tennessee, as an underdog, it was a win that made you think Derek Dooley was turning the corner, Dave, and I bet you were covering it. It was his first year. Tennessee beat the brakes off Ole Miss, of all teams. They had beaten them. They beat them 52-14. The first touchdown of the game was a tipped pass that Justin Hunter caught and ran 80 yards for a touchdown. And Tennessee, the reason that was impressive was because Ole Miss had won 42-17 the year before. They seemed like a solid program under Houston Nutt. And that was just a game that led to them imploding. And Tennessee won their final 4 games with Tyler Bray starting over Matt Sims at quarterback, which got them to a bowl game after a 2-6 start. And it was the one period of Derek Dooley's tenure where you felt that he might actually have a future.
Yes. Chris commented, and some people commented on John Adams and I going back and forth yesterday about his service. I completely respect the military. John has joked about, for those that don't know, the fact that he made sure that he did not have to go abroad to serve in Vietnam. And he got drafted, but he has joked about it before. Caleb, some people thought that I was giving him a hard time for serving. I was not. I was joking about the fact that John basically defended Wisconsin during the majority of his career, and I don't think that they were in any danger from the Viet Cong. Is that fair to say?
No, it's totally fair to say. I get what you're saying. And by the way, I don't even blame that, because everybody during that time that could avoid the draft or could avoid fighting did it because they didn't agree with the war. So you know,
but I don't want to paint John in that either, that he was like anti-Vietnam. He's not Jane Fonda. I just want everybody to know that John and I were joking, and he deadpans. And for those that haven't listened to us on radio in Knoxville, that's John. So everything's good there.
I mean, if he was anti-Vietnam, is anybody going to have a problem with him on that? The whole country now agrees that was a mistake.
Okay, coming up next, who Caleb voted for in the most recent election. No, we won't do that. The poll question: Vols are about to get hosed by the College Football Playoff Committee. 87% said yes, they hate the Vols. 13% said no. 10-2. No, 10-2 will do it.
Can we stop this they hate the Vol stuff, guys? Like, there's no conspiracy against Tennessee. The committee doesn't sit there and say, I hate Tennessee more than other teams. They're not thinking about that. Tennessee's going to get... Are there instances where Tennessee may not get preferential treatment or there may be bias against them? Yes, but it's not because they're Tennessee. It may be because, one thing we didn't bring up, Dave, maybe because Nico Iamaleava's hurt, they decided to drop Tennessee, and they just didn't want to admit that.
Yes. All right. The UPS store Hardin Valley, helping individuals and small businesses, wide range of products and services, locally owned and operated. The link right down below. Coming up on the program, have you heard of this? Because if you haven't, it is absolute gold. A Georgia player, after they were upset by Ole Miss, celebrated with the Ole Miss fans as they charged the field. It doesn't get any better than that. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Seriously, you've got to hear this. banksandjones.com. Give us 2 minutes and we'll be back with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker, Off the Hook Sports.
I've been in business actually 19 years this year. I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at NFC1.com or stop by any one of our 7 East Tennessee locations.
When the lights turn on and the game begins, you need a team you can rely on. Ray Varner Ford and Clinton's strong lineup of vehicles is crafted with the same dedication and hard work that drives our community. Experience quality and value in this pre-owned 2024 Ford Maverick XLT all-wheel drive, $31,990. 23 Ford Expedition 4x4 Limited, $66,590. 2023 Ford F-150 XLT Super Crew 4x4, $47,995. Local you trust, pre-owned vehicles you can afford. Ray Varner Ford, built for the game.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. banksandjones.com.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys.
Excuse me, Your Honor.
Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, who is it?
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports,
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
It's not often that a coach comes out and calls one of his own players an idiot, but sometimes it's apropos. As Caleb set this up, because there was a Georgia player that was caught via social media celebrating with Ole Miss's fans after the Rebels beat Georgia. So set this up for me, because this is as good as it gets when it comes to chatting about the SEC.
Yes. So Georgia tight end Jake Pope, after Ole Miss lost to Georgia Saturday, after Georgia lost to Ole Miss Saturday, and Ole Miss fans stormed the field to celebrate, Georgia tight end Jake Pope stayed on the field with Ole Miss players and fans and celebrated with them. Apparently, he had a friend at Ole Miss, and so Kirby Smart addressed it on Monday. And I want you guys to watch this. I'm going to play it because Fox did a good graphic of they have Kirby Smart talking, but they show the celebration, so you can kind of kill two birds with one stone on this, so we don't have to keep showing you guys a bunch of random clips. But here is basically what we saw happen in this moment, and it's very it's definitely kind of intriguing how this played out. Sorry, I'm just trying to get it. Okay. We'll just play the whole thing. All right, here we go. Okay. And this is Kirby Smart talking about it.
Kirby, there's a video on social media of Jake Pope seemingly celebrating with some Ole Miss fans on the field after the game. Just wanted to see if you had seen that and what your reaction to it was.
Yeah, what an idiot. I mean, just stupid. I didn't see it till today, but he's embarrassed about it. He's upset about it. That's obviously a childhood friend of his. He grew up and played with there at Buford and knows him, hadn't seen him in forever, but just not real smart. But to be honest with you, I don't have time to waste energy on that. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like my focus is on Tennessee. I'm not.
All right. Before we move on, Dave, can we address Kirby addressing what he said?
Yes. Can I go 4 downs on it and I'll set you up?
Well, can we 4 downs after it, or do you want to 4 downs it now?
Let's 4 downs it now. Brought to you by Dynasty Pools and Spas.
4 downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show.
4
downs. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
All right. So first down brought to you by Dynasty Pools and Spas. Be sure and mention Dave Hooker and Off the Hook Sports for their location in Athens, and you can get $500 off your spa. You can also get a free gift for just stopping by and saying hello, like a Celebrate 98 book, or you can also pick up a Hooker t-shirt, an Off the Hook Sports t-shirt. Coop, what should we do?
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
Thank you.
Coop here. First down.
All right. First down is this, Caleb. What do you make of a player celebrating on the field when an opposing team won?
It's the most embarrassing thing you could possibly do.
I think it may really be the most embarrassing thing that I have ever seen in this age, and it's now been around for 15, 20 years of social media. I think it's not egregious like P. Diddy dragging a woman down the hallway of a hotel, or Ray Rice. But other than that, something that's criminal, it's as bad as anything that I've seen on social media. It really is.
It is. And guys, for those who don't remember, Dave, I don't know if you would remember this because I think you were actually covering Alabama. You were covering Alabama when Butch Jones was that unpaid intern under Nick Saban, weren't you?
Yes.
Do you remember when Butch Jones, so he gets fired by Tennessee in 2017, goes to Alabama as an unpaid intern in 2018. Alabama beats the brakes off Tennessee. Butch Jones lights up victory cigars with the rest of the team. He gets lit up on Twitter because the joke is, you're lighting a victory cigar for beating a team that is trash, and they're trash because of you. It's your fault they suck. So
yeah, but that's nowhere close to this.
This is worse. At least Butch Jones was on Alabama at that time. You're celebrating a team that beat you. And yeah, no, this is beyond embarrassing. This is like, the only thing that comes close is by the way, I think I was wrong. It's Jake Pope's a Georgia defensive back, not a tight end. I apologize. I'm going to correct that. But either way,
transfer from Alabama, by the way. So he has no allegiance to anybody whatsoever.
Yeah, that's true. This is very like sometimes there's trolling. All right, I'll give you an example. The Grizzlies were playing the Warriors in the NBA playoffs one year. The Grizzlies have a song. They play Whoop That Trick every time they're winning a game. Okay, so it was like game 5. The Grizzlies beat the Warriors, and they're playing Whoop That Trick. Draymond Green knows they lost, knows they laid an egg. They're about to go home to Golden State, and he's going to try to win game 6. But Draymond Green is like hyping up the crowd, like Whoop That Trick, and he's like dancing with the fans. But you can tell he was more like trolling the fans in that moment. You know what I mean? It was more like, yeah, y'all got this one, but we're going to get you next time. Does that make sense? That's not what Jake Pope was doing here.
Now, this is pure idiocy.
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
Brought to you by Dynasty Pools and Spas. All right, second down is this. Kirby Smart called him an idiot. He's kind of backtracked a little bit off of that comment. Was he fair in calling Pope an idiot?
Yes.
Yes.
Y'all can say I'm crazy on this. It's the only time I would ever be okay with it.
I don't know who would say you're crazy.
If I don't care, well, like, okay, players make really dumb decisions all the time, and I'm never okay with calling them an idiot. This is so next level dumb. The only other time calling somebody an idiot was okay, Dave, was when, remember, Peyton Manning called Mike Vanderjagt an idiot at the Pro Bowl?
Drunken kicker, yes.
Yes, our idiot kicker got liquored up and ran his mouth. Why? Because Mike Vanderjagt got liquored up and went on. He says he wasn't drunk, but he went on a TV show and criticized Peyton Manning and Tony Dungy for not showing enough emotion. Yeah, Peyton Manning was right to call Mike Vanderjagt an idiot then. And Kirby Smart, even in a position of power and in a position of authority, is absolutely justified in calling this kid an idiot.
Yes. All right. So what down is next? Cooper Mays?
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
All right. Third down is this. Is there any excuse? Okay, they said he was with his teammate, his former high school teammate. Is there any excuse that would make this okay? Because he has announced on Twitter, or X, he says, I wanted to address the videos that have put out after the Ole Miss game. First and foremost, I wanted to say sorry for the way it was taken out of perspective and has caused distractions, commotions for my teammates and coaches. This is not representative of who I am in any way. In no way, shape, or form would I ever celebrate a loss in this program, and anyone who knows me well knows that. I don't know you well, but I know you enough to know that you're an idiot, and you shouldn't have done that. He goes on to say, my longtime family friends had come up to me unexpectedly after the game, and I was trying to get off the field safety, and were extremely excited to see me after the game. I was also surprised to see them as well, and that's why you saw the reaction that I gave via the video. They are also very close with my former teammate and longtime friend on the Ole Miss team, which is why they have their jerseys on. I am Georgia through thick and thin. I've never loved a group of guys more than the guys I go to battle with day in and day out. Lastly, and once again, I'm sorry to my teammates, coaches, and all fans around about the way that video looked, and I choose to move forward and get ready for the rest of the season with my brothers. Go Dogs. Do you think his teammates on third down will forgive him?
No.
Hell no, they won't.
No, the only way I think they will, Dave, is, and I want to address what Kirby Smart said about this too, but maybe they'll forgive him because maybe this is a deeper culture problem. Maybe Georgia has a lot of players who just don't care. I mean, could that be a thing? Let's be honest, Dave. Those early 2000s, not the 90s Tennessee teams, but those early 2000s Tennessee teams that kind of came around, we know there was a little bit less care about what happened, right? And
see, I don't think this is systemic of Georgia. I think this is systemic of the NIL. I don't want to call anybody out, but I was told that after the Arkansas loss, that there were a couple of players that didn't seem to take it too hard and that were playing music and just like after the game, like nothing had happened, when that could be a game that ultimately cost Tennessee a chance at the college football playoff. So I think it's systemic of NIL. Listen, when you talk to NFL players, they're more likely to root for their friends who they played with or played with at college than a particular team. Like, just because you played for the Eagles doesn't mean you're going to root for the Eagles for the rest of your life, because it's a business. I think this is NIL based to a large extent. I think they look at it as a stopping place, not, hey, I love this school, this is my school. I think this is an NIL thing.
You know what it reminds me of? Do you remember this is going to trigger my dad because he's a Mets fan, and we all know about Bobby Bonilla Day and the contract they gave the Mets. But do you remember the 1999 NLCS when Bonilla and Ricky Henderson were taken out of the game, and in the middle of the game, of a playoff game, they went into the dugout in the locker room and started playing cards, and just didn't even bother to find out what happened to their team.
I thought with the Mets, you were going to refer to Kevin Mitchell cutting the head off a cat in front of Dwight Gooden.
Oh, no. I wasn't gonna,
that was disturbing.
Was that the 86 Bad Boy Mets team?
Oh, yeah.
They were crazy. But, like, I guess the reason I'm bringing that up is that's what you're saying, that NIL is going to get that way. But, you know, you can still win that way even when that happens culturally, but not – there's a difference between that and celebrating. And that's why I brought up the early 2000s Fulmer teams is Darren Epps, I believe, was the man who wrote Orange Crushed, the 2005 season, and how it collapsed. And he had a chapter in there about how post 98, it just seemed like Philip Fulmer cared, like was not as intense on the team as he was, and the culture reflected it.
Yeah, I don't know about that book. All right, let's get to fourth down. What would you do to Pope? And 4 Downs is brought to you by Dynasty Pools and Spas. So just stop by in their Athens exit and say hello. Mention Off the Hook Sports sent you, and you get a free prize. Also, $500 off any spa that you choose. Dave Hooker here for Dynasty Pools and Spas. Your home for the best spas and everything you need to jump right in. Relaxing, therapeutic, absolutely. But what sets Dynasty Pools and Spas apart from others is that you get everything with any spa purchase. You get the cover lift, the steps, delivery, and chemicals. When Dynasty Pools and Spas delivers your spa from their Athens location within 125 miles, you'll get your own personal hydrotherapy spa. Mention me, Dave Hooker, or Off the Hook Sports, and get $500 off your top quality new spa. Dynasty Pools and Spas, just off the Athens exit. Drop in and receive a free gift from Off the Hook Sports, Dynasty Pools and Spas. Mention Off the Hook Sports for a drop-in prize and that $500 discount, Dynasty Pools and Spas. To check out some of the Dynasty Spa models and to buy spa chemicals, go to dynastypoolsandspas.com. Dynasty Pools and Spas.
Cooper Mays here. 4th down.
If you're Kirby Smart, what do you do with Pope? I'm going to go ahead and tell you, I'd kick him off the team. He's done.
Well, and let me show, it's 24 seconds. This is what Kirby Smart said yesterday in response to this. It's a 24-second clip.
Yeah, I don't like to comment on the internal stuff going on inside. He did talk to the team, did a great job. I'll say I should not have called the kid an idiot. That was a mistake by me, but I appreciate Jake. He's a great kid. He works really hard. He's a team player. I think he knows it was a emotional mistake, and he told the team that. So I appreciate the way he handled it.
I am going to say that I'd kick him off the team too. I'm with you. Kick him off the team. I don't care what Kirby said. Kick him off the team. Kirby was right to call him an idiot. This was the wrong thing to do, to walk it back. You don't let this infect your culture. But, Dave, I think it's a deeper issue with Georgia's culture right now. And I think Kirby has let the culture slide to a significant degree.
Well, that might be the case, but I don't care. I'm getting rid of him. He played in 12 games last year, primarily on special teams with Alabama. He transferred, and now he doesn't play much for them now. I think it's pragmatic, and I think it's the right thing to do, just to go ahead and boot him and give him his walking papers. Let's bring in Austin Mock here from The Athletic. Austin, we appreciate your time. How are you, sir?
Doing good. Thanks so much for having me, guys.
Hey, we appreciate it. We want to talk some college football playoff projections. First, have you ever seen an opposing player celebrate with the other fans after they just lost?
Yeah, it's definitely not the look you want to have there, but have not seen that. And honestly, you don't see much. I'm actually surprised that hasn't happened before with either family members or something. But yeah, tough tough look there.
It's not good. All right, Austin, give us your sense in Tennessee, because you do a great bracket of breaking down who you think is going to be where in the college football playoff. So what are your thoughts on the Vols heading into the Georgia game?
Yeah, I mean, this is the big one, right? If they win, I don't want to say they're automatically in with a victory on Saturday, but have to feel pretty good from where they stand if they want to make the playoff. If they do get a win, if they get a loss, things get a little dicier, just because I don't really know how the committee is going to handle them. Like, they were ranked behind Indiana and BYU, so to me that sounds like the committee's not super impressed with Tennessee's resume. The committee looks at, like, I know it's not the best stat, but over teams that you've beat that have a 500 record or better, Tennessee doesn't have a lot of those wins somehow, and despite being in the SEC. So a lot of season left. I know it doesn't seem like that, but there is so many things change over the last 3 weeks of the season here. But I think they're still in a good spot even if they lose. But I win and you're kind of in, I think, is where they stand now. Loss, you're kind of at mercy of what other teams do the rest of the way.
Austin, how much damage did that Ole Miss win over Georgia do to Tennessee's chances? I follow y'all's site. You guys had Tennessee, The Athletic had Tennessee at a 61% chance of making the CFP going into last week, and it dropped to 39% this week, from my understanding. Was that just the Ole Miss one?
Yeah, that brought Ole Miss back into the picture. Basically, it was, they had a 50. The game was basically a coin flip before the game. They had a chance to lose out or miss out on the playoff, because I don't think they were going to get in. I don't think they're a team that'll get in with a 3-loss record. But it's tough because there's this whole logjam of possible logjam of SEC teams, that can finish with 2 losses. And it just really, like, where does, obviously you have Alabama, Ole Miss, and Georgia ranked right against each other. But if Tennessee loses to Georgia, you have this, like, crazy circle of Ole Miss beat Georgia, Alabama beat Georgia, but Tennessee beat Alabama. So it's really, I don't want to say the committee's just going to pick and choose, and I don't really know who that benefits. If it's me, if I had to guess, it probably benefits Georgia and Alabama in that essence. But it really becomes kind of a picking game here if Tennessee loses and you have those 4 teams kind of all sandwiched together.
If you were to predict right now, does the SEC get 4 or 5 teams in the college football playoff?
Oh, that's tough. I think it's 4, just because, like, I don't know if there's enough spots left. Like, there's this interest. It's going to come down to conference championship weekend's going to be huge. Like, if BYU keeps winning, you're going to, like, if they're ranked, they're ranked 6th right now. If they by then are ranked 5th, or if they lose to, a Colorado or a Kansas State, are they going to drop out entirely? Like we just saw Miami only fall to 9. So it's kind of breaking with BYU not losing, even though they probably should have lost a couple games so far. I don't know if there's enough room. And I think the SEC, unfortunately, they're the best conference by pretty much a landslide. And I think there's just not enough teams left or spots left for those teams to get in. So if I had to guess, I think it's 4. 5's definitely possible, but I think it's probably 4.
How underrated is all of a sudden then that Notre Dame Army game going to be in a week or so? Because if they lose, that does open the door for 5 SEC teams, right?
Yes, I would think if Notre Dame loses, that would definitely, if it's the Army, because then that's 2. Army's ranked in the top 25, so that's not really seen as a bad loss. But obviously, the Northern Illinois one is the worst loss of any team that's in the playoff hunt here. So, yeah, that would add it up. Like, if I try to think of, like, if Notre Dame lost at USC in the final week, that opens it up as well. But yeah, if you're one of these, if you're Tennessee or any of these SEC teams that are not really Texas, I think it's really just Texas at this point. You're kind of hoping for the Notre Dames. You need Indiana to get smoked by Ohio State this weekend to kind of, I think that helps them as well to get an extra team in. So there's a couple things here. Basically, you're just rooting for everybody ahead of them, ahead of you to lose.
Austin, how much do you think politics can come into play? In other words, the Big Ten's going to want as many teams in the college football playoff as the SEC and vice versa. I would argue that the SEC has more college football playoff eligible teams than the Big Ten, which is incredibly top heavy. But you have the two sides kind of working together now to pull up the 16-team format. I mean, how political does this get of you scratch my back, I scratch yours when those decisions are made?
Yeah, I don't know. It's tough to tough to see. I do think that if we have a Georgia, we'll just use last night's bracket, Georgia being the first team out. Texas A&M is, they were ranked 15th. They're right on the field, the door, knocking on the door to get into the playoff. I think it's just, this is, no matter what happens, no matter how this season shakes out, the 14-team playoff at the very minimum is going to be a thing here in the next, maybe 2 years even. I think they can renegotiate in 2 years, if I remember correctly. So I just think it's one of those things, because you're going to see it. And definitely if the SEC keeps beating up on each other, that if Tennessee loses, you have this Alabama, Ole Miss, Georgia, Tennessee problem. And like I said, they're going to have to kind of pick. You can make, it's one of those things where you can make an argument for anyone, like, oh, Tennessee beat Alabama, but then Georgia beat Texas. And you just keep going around and around in the circle. And that's going to leave a pretty big name program, blue blood, if you will, maybe on the outside looking in. And that's just going to, it's just going to become a thing where these teams, these two conferences want to expand this, even with the Big Ten only having 4 teams in the conversation.
Yeah, so Austin, I want to go down this list because I want to talk about a few teams real quick. So because obviously Indiana and BYU leapfrogged Tennessee this week. I don't know how, because I don't see how you could say the resume got better this past weekend by beating Utah by 1 and Michigan by 5 if you didn't think they were better than Tennessee last week. But just to own in on a couple of these, let me start with Indiana. If Indiana loses and gets smoked by Ohio State and goes 11-1, but they get blown out in their only game, do you think all of these SEC teams we're mentioning that are 10-2 will get the nod over an 11-1 Indiana?
I thought I would have more confidence if Miami would have been ranked lower. Just because I don't think like Miami's schedule is all that. I don't think their wins are all that impressive, and they only dropped to 9. With a loss to Georgia Tech, a team that Notre Dame beat 31-13. I know Georgia Tech's quarterback situation was a little different for that game, but I'd have a little bit more faith if Miami would have fallen. I think they'll be in the conversation. It'll maybe be picking resumes here. If they all went out and it's, those 4 teams are at 2 losses, I do think there's going to be conversations. And if it's like a 49-7 type of win for Ohio State over Indiana, I think then it's going to be really hard for Indiana to have a case there. But yeah, I truly think this is one of those eye test kind of margin of victory is going to matter a lot, and Indiana should be doing whatever they can to keep that game close.
When you speak of margin of victory, 2 years ago, Tennessee was number 1. They go to Georgia, and I think the score, Caleb, you might correct me, was 27-13, but that felt like a game that Georgia could have won 45-6 if they wanted to. So margin of victory, eye test, how important is that Tennessee doesn't have Nico, which we haven't discussed with you, but if Tennessee doesn't have Nico and they go down and they lose 24-23, does that, I know it sounds weird to lose a game, but does that in some ways help Tennessee if they lose close?
Maybe. It's really hard because, you're getting into the point where like they can kind of do whatever they want. Definitely with, we saw last year with Florida State, what an injury can do to a, team's ranking. So I think it'll ultimately, it will help. Close loss to Georgia in any fashion, I think will look good for Tennessee, because I think Tennessee is lacking those big wins that some other SEC teams have. But it's just one of those things that I don't know. I think they pick and choose when it matters. Maybe like when 2 teams are really close, or like if these 4 SEC teams that we're referencing versus Indiana, it might be one of those things where like, okay, if Indiana loses by 7 at Ohio State, now it's like, okay, they've kind of destroyed everybody they've played. They played the number 2 team in the country close. Maybe they get the benefit of the doubt. Where if it's, even if it's 35-13, things look a little bit different there. And I will say part of it is, the helmet matters. Indiana's not the brand that any of those other SEC teams are. And I think that does factor in when it's close. When I don't think it's like, if BYU's undefeated, I don't think a SEC team would jump them necessarily. But when it's 11-1 versus a 10-2 SEC team, I think that the brand does matter.
Well, good, because I'm on record saying that if Indiana makes the college football playoff, we should just blow this thing up and start all over.
I mean, it depends. Like if they play Ohio State close, I think they deserve it in a way. Just because like it goes both ways, because we're either going to go the direction of basically the power, like the Big Ten and SEC, like ruling this all, and even further, like, you know, maybe the top 7-8 brand names in the SEC, the top 6 brand names in the Big Ten, calling the shots there. But that is one thing interesting, because these are the two conferences, you know, which seem like pulling the strings in college football right now. How much does the Big Ten pull for Indiana is going to be a big thing, which they will, because that's how it works. But we're going to kind of see how strong that pull really is.
So Austin, actually, and funny enough, another thing, we talk about politicking. They would love to see Notre Dame playing Indiana in a college football playoff game. I mean, that's Northern Indiana, Southern Indiana, just different, for those who don't know, very different cultures and a lot of things. So getting to, but Austin, let me give another hypothetical real quick, because BYU leapfrogged Tennessee. The committee, my understanding, is not supposed to hold conference championship losses against a team relative to another team and what they did in the regular season if they don't play a conference championship game. So say BYU hypothetically goes undefeated. They play Colorado in the Big 12 title game, and Colorado beats the brakes off BYU. I'm talking about 50-0. Does BYU still stay ahead of a Tennessee that may not play for the SEC title because that was a conference championship game, so it can't really be held against them? So instead, Colorado and BYU both just go?
Yeah, that's the interesting question, right? Like we don't really know what goes on in that committee room. If I had to guess, definitely if they get the 50-0 type game, I think BYU's out of the playoff at that point. I kind of understood Indiana jumping Tennessee just because, one, they're 10-0, they've one more win than BYU. Michigan is like that middle, Michigan versus Arkansas is like kind of similar. I know Michigan's looked worse at times, but I see that as like kind of that level of team this year. So the committee sees that as like a fine win, and sure, maybe they get a little bit of a brand bias there with Michigan. The BYU thing, I can't really grasp why they jumped. Like they should have lost. Like you could very easily make the argument that they should have lost. Utah is not, I don't even like, they're under 500 in a weaker Big 12. So yeah, I'm not sure what happened. I can't really explain that. And that, if you would have asked me last week, I would have said for sure that BYU's not in if they don't win the Big 12. With them jumping Tennessee, maybe the committee likes them more than we realize, and that SMU win might be, giving them a little bit of a boost as well. So I don't see it, but yeah, again, they jumped them, so maybe the committee is a little bit fonder of BYU than I am.
All right, Austin. Last thing, Tennessee loses close to Georgia, but handles UTEP, which they will. Beats Vanderbilt by a sound margin, which I think they will. If you had to bet your mortgage, does Tennessee make the college football playoff?
Man, it depends, I think, on if Vanderbilt gets a win against LSU, maybe that'll boost things. I think that's a for sure. But I'm going to go yes. I think they will make it at 10-2 because I don't know. I think Georgia's kind of the odd one out there right now because Alabama's 2 spots ahead of them. I feel like Tennessee will. I don't know. It's tough, but I think 10-2 they'll be in. That's my guess.
Austin, great stuff, buddy. You got a tough job, but you got the best last name for it ever. You do a mock prediction, so I don't know what that says about me and what I do in my off time, but Austin, we certainly appreciate it, buddy. We'll hopefully catch up with you again. You're doing great work, man. We appreciate it. How do people follow your work?
Yep. Follow me up at The Athletic. And I'm on every social media platform at AMOC419. So,
all right, buddy. Austin, we'll talk to you soon. Thank you, sir. I really appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you, guys.
All right, Austin's appearance brought to you by our good friends at Double D Piping, and a red hot stat of the day brought to you by Double D Piping.
Double D Piping provides full service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beat. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping, the absolute best.
Stat of the day. What do you got for me, Caleb Calhoun?
All right, I got some patterns for you. Entering 2024, Tennessee had a new starter at quarterback. Michigan was the defending national champions, and they had a head coach in his 7th year as a head coach. When was the last time that happened? All 3 of those things?
I don't know.
1998. But that's not the real story, because like those patterns align. Fulmer, you can kind of call it his 7th year. We consider 1992 his first year, but you could debate if that's actually his first year because he was an interim for 4 games. But still, somewhat 7 years, right? Here's the crazier part. What else happened in 98 that just happened this year?
I don't know. Presidential election? No, wasn't that. I try to think of what you think about.
The longtime voice of the Vols revealed that he would be retiring at the end of the year.
Yes, he did.
That was John Ward's last year. This is Bob Kessling's last year. The parallels of this year in 1998, guys, are getting more and more similar by the day.
I agree. Chattanooga Mortgage, congratulations. Your home search just got easier. Buying a home in Chattanooga has never been easier. Guys, they helped me fix my credit to make the home purchase that I wanted. Chat Mortgage with 2 T's, chatmortgage.com. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker, Off the Hook Sports, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. 5 balls to watch against the Bulldogs coming up next. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank, life made better.
With our brand new location on Emory Road, Eye Care Optical is bringing East Tennessee's best eye care to your neighborhood. Doctors Johnston and Combs offer unmatched expertise and care without a trip to Knoxville. Eye Care Optical, now in Powell.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at NFC1.com or stop by any one of our 7 East Tennessee locations.
When the lights turn on and the game begins, you need a team you can rely on. Ray Varner Ford and Clinton's strong lineup of vehicles is crafted with the same dedication and hard work that drives our community. Step up your game in this 2024 F-150 4x4 Super Crew STX, $46,994. 24 Ford Expedition XLT, $59,978. 24 F-250 Crew Cab 4x4 STX, $57,888.
Local you trust, performance you can afford. Ray Varner Ford, built for the game.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, who is it?
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports,
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
Sorry for a little bit of dead air. That was Caleb's fault.
How the heck was that my fault? Dave controls the board, guys, not me.
It's true. City Heating and Air Conditioning, 50 years in East Tennessee. Integrity matters. cityheatandair.com. It is time for 5 balls to watch in the Tennessee game versus Georgia. I'm having trouble not keeping my eyes on the quarterback positions. That would be two, and Gaston Moore and Nico Iamaleava. So, but convince me otherwise, Caleb, as Caleb has the 5 balls to watch, brought to you by Commercial Bank. Bank on it. Commercial Bank, member FDIC, life made better, CBTN.com. Who's the 5th ball to watch as we count them down?
Let me first get this out of the way before I name them. There are no quarterbacks on this list for Tennessee because we don't know who the quarterback will be for Tennessee.
Okay, that's fair.
And I don't think the quarterback play is going to matter that much. So number 5 is a man who keeps breaking out, who I had him on my list last week, and he came away with an interception, and that is Boo Carter. Carson Beck. And here's why. Carson Beck keeps trying to thread needles with throws, and he doesn't have the arm to do it, particularly over the middle of the field. Lots of chances for the nickel to step up and make plays, Dave. And that's Boo Carter's time to shine.
Hey now. I got you on that one. Number 4 as we count them down.
All right, number 4. This is a shocker for you, Dave, but Omar Norman lied.
Hey now.
Tate Ratledge is wrecked on the offensive line now. I think he's going to play with a sprained ankle, but Micah Morris, who's been filling in for him and is also starting on the line, is also hurt. Both guards, the interior line is wrecked. While I think Omari Thomas is the more consistent player, like team player for Tennessee, Omar Norman lost the big play guy in the middle, isn't he?
Yeah. Possibly dirty player, but that's fine. Hey now.
I mean, we're seeing 2 sacks coming in again. So, yeah. Omar Norman
after he just took that Brock Vandegrift kid and practically killed him on the sideline. You said that there shouldn't be any penalty whatsoever, but I don't know.
Oh, this sticking your hands out is killing somebody, according to Dave. Oh my gosh. Okay. Dave is the ultimate Karen. I would never want to deal with Dave.
I don't know what that means. My wife got a new haircut and she asked me, she goes, I look like a Karen. And I was like, I don't know what that means. All right, Caleb, who's next?
All right, number 3. Georgia had the best way to torch their defense is to find a receiver to kind of go off. We saw what Ryan Williams did. I think Tennessee's best overall big play receiver now on a consistent basis is Dante Thornton. He's the one that can use his speed and beat you on the outside right now. So not that Brew and Squirrel White can't be effective. They can, but I actually think Dante Thornton is the guy to really impact this game if the offense is going to do anything.
Hey now. No argument there. What do you got? Who's number 2 before we get to number 1? Bank on it, brought to you by Commercial Bank. Commercial Bank, member FDIC, life made better.
Number 2 is one of the obvious, but James Pierce Jr. I think there's going to be a lot of chances at sacks in this game. Both of Ole Miss's defensive ends each had 2 sacks last week. I could have put James Pierce and Tyree West, or James Pierce and Dominic Bailey, or James Pierce and Joshua Joseph, but James Pierce is the headliner, so James Pierce is on the list to represent that group.
Let's assume that Nico doesn't or can't play. I would say that the best opportunity for Tennessee to win, and the one player who could be solely responsible for that win, would be James Pierce. So I would actually have him number 1. Number 1 coming up next. Bank on it, brought to you by Commercial Bank.
Commercial Bank is your neighborhood bank. What makes us different from other banks? We understand that every customer has unique opportunities, challenges, and financial concerns. We don't expect you to fit into the same box as the next person or business. Whether it's purchasing a home, saving for your child's future, or planning for your next vacation, we're with you every step of the way to navigate life's big decisions. Commercial Bank.
The number 1 ball to watch is who, Caleb Calhoun?
Are you ready? Buckle up.
Did you say Max Gilbert?
No, but I should have put him on here just for you. No, but it's another white guy. Will Brooks, baby. Will Brooks. Will Brooks is coming away with 2 interceptions in this game, and he will be the biggest reason Tennessee wins. That's right, Dave. Will Brooks. Come at me. Will Brooks.
Well, it's funny. I wrote a column about the Tennessee's overachievers, and you could argue that their most productive players are both overachievers, and that is Cooper Mays, who he's got pinned on his Twitter profile that he was too small, not an SEC caliber player, too undersized. So I still think that motivates him to this day. and Will Brooks, who Jamal McCoy was talking about how smart he was, and he's had 2, I know, which sounds like the Caucasian stereotype. He's a gym rat.
Gym rat, smart, always in position.
Dad was a coach, worked harder than everybody else, all that bull. But he's made the plays to warrant that sort of response. So, yeah, Will Brooks could be key, and you get the feeling that we'll know after this week one thing for certain. We won't know if Tennessee's going to make the college football playoff or not, but we'll know for certain if Carson Beck is totally in the tank, which could be the case, or he's a fighter and he ends up having a solid season for the Bulldogs, which right now he's not. 11 turnovers in the last 5 games, I believe it is. So, Caleb, I think we'll know that about Carson Beck by the end of this game. And one of the guys, you mentioned 2 of them, that could put the nail in the coffin for Carson Beck's career at Georgia, Boo Carter and Will Brooks. Both guys have shown a penchant. I know that Boo just has 1 interception, but he's around the ball all of the time. Will Brooks has 3 interceptions, 2 of which changed the narrative of the game that he picked those balls off in. So I think you're wise to go with defensive backs there, especially guys that are close to or in the secondary and that could pick off passes.
I totally agree.
You totally agree with yourself. I just said I agree with you, and you say I totally agree.
Yes, I agree with myself. Always.
That's good.
Yeah, no, and honestly, typically I've talked about
nice shirt. I totally agree.
I've talked typically about how Will Brooks' impact for most of the year has been because Jamal McCoy is such a good lockdown corner on the outside. Dave, with the lack of Georgia weapons, I don't even think Jamal McCoy is going to be that necessary this game. I think Carson Beck's going to be threading needles constantly throughout the inside, middle of the field, and that's where Will Brooks and Boo Carter are going to just eat. And I mean, I could see Carson Beck is going to both are kind of sneaky players because they kind of sneak up. Have you noticed they kind of sneak up into the play when you don't see them around the ball at first?
Yes.
That is literally the recipe for Carson Beck to just have turnovers galore, isn't it? And particularly if he's under pressure from Omar Norman Lott and James Pierce. Look, I mean, we talk about players not finishing games because almost no quarterback has against Tennessee. I mean, is there an off chance that Carson Beck doesn't finish the game against Tennessee?
Certainly.
And by the way,
go ahead.
Is that good or bad if Carson Beck doesn't finish the game, though? Because what if Gunnar Stockton comes in or, and Tennessee's just not prepared for him? What if it's a Chavis, Matt Mock situation where, they don't know how to stop the quarterback draw?
Guy's done
the real fancy quarterback draw that,
Guy's done so much and coached at multiple SEC schools, but he'll always be known for the mock draw and the lack of defending it. Let me ask you this. If you're Tennessee, are you leaning more towards pressuring Carson Beck or playing coverage? Portions of the program brought to you by Dynasty Pools and Spas. Stop by their Athens location, get a free gift from Off the Hook Sports, and you can also get $500 off your fantastic spa that includes everything. I think Tennessee is going to drop back in the zone more often than not. Dave Hooker here for Dynasty Pools and Spas, your home for the best spas and everything you need to jump right in. Relaxing, therapeutic, absolutely. But what sets Dynasty Pools and Spas apart from others is that you get everything with any spa purchase. You get the cover lift, the steps, delivery, and chemicals. When Dynasty Pools and Spas delivers your spa from their Athens location within 125 miles, you'll get your own personal hydrotherapy spa. Mention me, Dave Hooker, or Off the Hook Sports, and get $500 off your top quality new spa. Dynasty Pools and Spas, just off the Athens exit. Drop in and receive a free gift from Off the Hook Sports, Dynasty Pools and Spas. Mention Off the Hook Sports for a drop-in prize and that $500 discount, Dynasty Pools and Spas. To check out some of the Dynasty Spa models and to buy spa chemicals, go to dynastypoolsandspas.com. Dynasty Pools and Spas. Caleb, it's oversimplifying things to say that Tennessee's just going to drop back into coverage or that they're going to blitz every single down. It's going to be a mixture of both. But if you're Tim Banks and you're putting together a game plan, are you thinking more pressure or are you thinking more dropping back into coverage?
Dropping back into coverage because Georgia's offensive line is so wrecked. And honestly, this is what we've talked about throughout. This is what we've been talking about for a while throughout the NIL era. And you're seeing this with a school like Georgia when they get hurt on the first string, they don't have a factory of plugging guys in. And I mean, Dave, given Georgia's injuries on the offensive line, I got a lot more money on Tennessee's defensive line winning those battles this weekend than Georgia's offensive line. I think Tennessee's defensive line is going to give Georgia's offensive line hell.
I agree with that. And I don't think you have to send extra pressure to get pressure. I don't think you have to send extra defenders, blitzers to get pressure on Carson Beck. And also, I don't trust him to read coverages. And I'm thinking that I send 4 most of the time. And I bet that those guys, I'm not saying go vanilla and just send 4 and don't bring pressure, but I think you sit back and you see Carson Beck. Can you beat me? Can you be consistently good enough throughout the game and complete short passes like a lot of teams have done against Tennessee? Now, the one thing that scares me a little bit about the Georgia game, well, I mean, a lot. I mean, that Georgia's a 9-point favorite. But the one thing I think should scare Tennessee fans a little bit is they're very proficient in that 3-down front. And that's kind of their base, which has given Tennessee's offense trouble. So on the flip side of it, that is disconcerting if you're looking at the game from an X's and O's standpoint.
But Josh Heupel's prepared for that this time. It's not a new look he won't have seen. He's been fine against the 3-down front when he knows it's coming. I mean, Alabama ran a 3-down front with Nick Saban, and he torched him 2 years ago.
Yeah, sure. I'm not saying that won't be the case, but when you're looking at it just from an X's and O's standpoint, Caleb, I would offer this, and that is from an X's and O's standpoint, I slightly like Georgia's defense over Tennessee's offense. Flip side, I like Tennessee's defense a lot over Georgia's offense. Would you agree or disagree with those two statements?
I kind of agree. Yeah, I agree with you on that. Definitely. I want to address Timothy McGee's point because he says drops in zone get killed by the run. Well, and I want to, and thanks for the super chat, Timothy, but I do want to address, we're not saying play like a cover 2 where everybody drops back. I mean, I think you're still going to keep Thielander in a spy, right? Kind of playing in a moderate drop back spy moment where that way he's around to be able to stop the run, probably Arian Carter to be able to stop. We're just saying they're not going to likely send them on blitzes.
Yeah. And I don't think that we're not talking about 100% of the time. We're just talking about which way do you lean in your game planning.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, they're still going to send some pressure. I mean, you would be crazy not to, but this is where I think Tim Banks, quite frankly, can have as big of an impact on the game as anybody else wearing a jersey or wearing a coaching headset, because he is so good at dialing up those multiple stunts and blitzes that we've talked about. And yes, we do appreciate you, Timothy, for the super chat. That goes to Quincy Calhoun's college fund. Coming up, the Lady Vols didn't look so grand. We'll talk more about Tennessee, Georgia as well. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. I remind you to check out Peak IV Hydration in South Knoxville and Sevierville. Live life to your fullest. Hydrate, rejuvenate, and elevate your health with Peak IV Hydration. That's peakivhydration.com. And we have the patch that you can order there online. And man, it will absolutely take care of you, whether it's energy or hydration. So order the patch online. The lovely Ashley says, I'm late to the party. Well, we'll excuse you this one time, Ashley. She said, has the injury report dropped yet? No. But for those that are just getting on board with the program, I'll tell you what I reported at the beginning of the show in 2 minutes. The show represented by the Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
2024 F-150 4x4 Super Crew STX, $46,994. 24 Ford Expedition XLT, $59,978. 24 F-250 Crew Cab 4x4 STX, $57,888.
Local you trust, performance you can afford.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare. With our brand new location on Emory Road, Eye Care Optical is bringing East Tennessee's best eye care to your neighborhood. Doctors Johnston and Combs offer unmatched expertise and care without a trip to Knoxville. Eye Care Optical, now in Powell.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beat. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping, the absolute best in fire prevention.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports,
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
Caleb, give us an update on the poll question. Quality Tire Pros serving Chattanooga's community since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service automotive. That's where my car is right now. Brakes, alignments, oil changes, and more. QualityTirePros.com. In downtown Chattanooga, QualityTirePros.com. Tell Bo that Off the Hook Sports and Dave said, hey, Bo. All right, Caleb. What is our poll question that we have up now? Are you muted? My goodness.
No.
Caleb's muted himself.
What would you do if a Vol celebrated with opposing team's fans? Boot him, forgive him. 64% say boot him, 36% say forgive him. No, I'm with you. Boot him. Kick him off the team. Like, no, you don't celebrate a loss ever.
Boot his A.
If you want to go shake everybody's hand and you got a friend you want to have conversations with after the game and casual conversation, that's fine, right? But like, you don't jump up and down and celebrate.
I wouldn't even be okay with that, Caleb.
Yeah, but people do that all the time. Like, I've seen people have conversations.
I want somebody that's so mad about losing they storm off the field.
I get it. I do too, but I'm saying I don't boot somebody off the team if they go have a conversation with a friend from an opposing team after the game. That's happened, you know. I randomly watched the SEC title game highlights the other night from the 97 Tennessee Auburn game, and Damian Craig, remember Auburn almost beat them? I was having conversations with Team Martin out after the game. I'm not going to sit there and say Damian Craig is terrible for that.
Okay, but let me ask you this. Whose response do you like better? Omari Thomas pushing a fan into another fan as Arkansas charged the field, or this Pope kid who celebrates with the other team? You think about that, mull it over. And I remind people they need to join Hooker's Corner as we have a series of players on Hooker's Corner, increased recruiting coverage there that are looking at Georgia and Tennessee. So you need to check that out. Also, you'll be registered for this awesome prize that's right behind me. Look at this. It's a John Henderson autographed mini helmet that you could win thanks to our friends at Sports Treasures. Sports Treasures carrying over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. Follow on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia, daily updates on Facebook. Again, sportstreasurestn.com, sportstreasurestn.com. It's just $9.98 a month. We'd greatly appreciate it. And it also gets you registered for our Rick Terry Grade 8 Garmin Challenge, brought to you by Rick Terry Jewelry Design. They want to be your jeweler looking for affordable game day jewelry, a Tennessee tradition. So when we hit 8,000 subscribers, which is just right around the corner, we'll give away a Garmin watch worth over $1,000. So all you have to do is join Hooker's Corner for just $9.98. More interaction with me and Caleb Calhoun, and who wouldn't want that? All right, here's what I'm reporting. I've been told that Nico Iamaleava has passed the concussion protocol test. Now, in all fairness, a guy named the Bear, what's his name again? He was on ESPN.
Chris Fallica.
He's named the Bear. The Bear's growling says that he's hearing from his sources. I don't know who they are. Is Nico is not going to play, very likely not going to play, and it's a severe concussion. I've never been led to believe severe concussions. I mean, they're all serious, but I've never been led to believe that this one's any more severe than any of the other ones. So I'm willing to report that. Pete Thamel has said that Nico was on the practice field on Tuesday and that Nico is in concussion protocol and that Nico is questionable for the game on Saturday, which I would agree with what Pete Thamel said, but I'm probably slightly more optimistic based off a conversation that I had with somebody close to the program just before we went on the air today. So, Caleb, all that being said, how important is it for Nico to play? And if he was limited or has been limited, what do you expect out of Nico if he hasn't gotten all the practice time that one would expect?
I mean, I'm not sure because I'm not sure how much practice time he's gotten. So we're going to have to kind of see how that goes. If he's practiced with the team the whole week, then I think he's fine. So, yeah.
And listen, the thing that's scary about the Bears report, by the way, if you were nicknamed after a wild animal, Caleb, what would it be?
I'd like to be a dog.
That's not a wild animal. So would you
be a wolf?
Okay. Caleb, the Wolf Calhoun kind of has a ring to it. I would be a Burmese python, I think. But anyway, here's what scares me, because I've said this before. I believe that Tennessee, much like every single school, Caleb, has sources that are paid by guys in Vegas to give them information. So this Bear guy, he's a big gambling guy. That to me is the scary part about it, that he may have heard something from Vegas. Maybe that's his sources. So
that's what stood out to me more than anything, was that he is a gambling guy. Now Jimmy Hyams talks about how he's been wrong a lot in gambling, but anybody who knows gambling knows you can have very good inside intel info and still not predict right once the season kicks off and once games kick off.
Yep. Okay. So, and by the way, Jimmy talked to us earlier on the program, and he said that the shoulder might also be an issue too. So, Caleb the Wolf Calhoun, get it?
I like it. See, perfect. I'd love to be a wolf.
That's pretty good. All right, Caleb the Wolf Calhoun gives us his take. All right, Brent Venables gets the dreaded vote of confidence. So if we can go ahead and share that, because this is the second coach in the past week to get the dreaded vote of confidence. Billy Napier got it, but there's reason to believe that Napier could indeed hang on for another year because they want to spend that money that they would pay him in a buyout to NIL. So I kind of believe that dreaded vote of confidence that was released by Florida and Scott Strickland, the AD, who's good at setting up interviews, earlier this week. Or was that was last week? And then Florida went on to get hammered over the weekend. So what do you think of the Brent Venables dreaded vote of confidence? What does that mean for the Oklahoma coach? Because I don't ever think that Josh Heupel would go to Oklahoma, but it's something we always need to keep an eye on, right?
Yes. And so on Tuesday, the University of Oklahoma's president and athletic director gave football coach Brent Venables a vote of confidence after the school's Board of Regents meeting. Oklahoma, Dave, the quotes stand out even more. Oklahoma President Joseph Harris, quote, "We all get emotional in the course of the season. What's unwavering is the commitment to him. This is a new era for us, but it's also a new era for college athletics, and there's going to be a lot of adjustment, and there's going to be a lot that takes place. As far as my commitment to Coach Venables, it's 100%. Athletic Director Joe Castiglione adds, "Obviously, the season thus far has not gone as we'd hoped or planned. We're mindful that we haven't met the Oklahoma standard for 2024 That said, we truly believe in Coach Venables and our team and are completely focused on both supporting them and looking at all the ways to address the needed improvements now as soon as possible, as well as in preparation for next year. The things that stand out to me are the president saying we all get emotional and the AD saying the season has not gone as we'd hoped or planned, and we're mindful that we haven't met the Oklahoma standard. There's nothing you could say after those two quotes to make me believe you when you say you have the vote of confidence in Venables, quite honestly.
Yeah, that makes it kind of sound worse. It sounds like a couple people were screaming in that Board of Regents meeting that you got to fire him. You got to fire him.
That's exactly what happened.
Yeah,
that's exactly what happened. Somebody in the Board of Regents was like, we demand he be fired. And he was like, no. And they were like, no.
Okay, so his buyout is in the realm, I've been told, of about $45 to $50 million. That's a lot of money. Now, I don't doubt that they could get together the guys to pay it, but you suddenly have this new expense called NIL that's going to come down the pike, and they're going to have to spend about $30 million on that. So, Caleb, my question for you is, could some of these coaches get a reprieve for a year, as I think will be the case with Billy Napier? Basically has nothing to do with them or their coaching, just because of NIL.
Yeah, that's a huge part of it. It's about the talent that people want to land. And look, you see this in the NFL all the time, Dave. How often do you see in the NFL of a coach should be on the hot seat, but they realize that they are about to land an amazing, I'll give you an example. Doc Rivers was borderline fired from the Celtics in 06-07. Why did he stay around in 07-08? Because they went and traded to get Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen. And the talent itself outweighs the coach nowadays. I've said this for a while. We're about to enter, guys, and this is one of the craziest things you've ever heard me say. Dave, we're about to enter a Moneyball era of head football coaches. There's going to be a team that realizes they can spend less on coaches and apply that to NIL and get more on talent because, guys, spoiler alert, if you've watched football at all for the past 100 years, talent is 75% of winning a championship. Coaching is 25%, maybe less than that.
Okay, let's address the $1 million question or the 800-pound elephant in the room, whatever the case may be. Would Oklahoma potentially, if they made a change in Brent Venables, would they give Josh Heupel a call? Portions of the program brought to you by TristarHatsCo.com. Use the promo code HOOK for 10% off.
Have you seen the latest TriStar Hats Co. product?
TriStar Hats Co.? What's that?
You know, those really cool hats, shirts, tumblers, and even license plates with 3 stars like the official Tennessee flag and stripes like the American flag. Pretty patriotic if you ask me.
Ah, gotcha. Seen those. Those are cool. Where can I get them?
Simple. TristarHatsCo.com. And if you order now, there's 10% on any order $50 or more. Plus, use the promo code HOOKED.
With the promo code HOOKED, you get 10% off. That's hooked.
And don't forget free shipping with any order over $50. Stock up at TristarHatsCo.com. That's TristarHatsCo.com. There are plenty of wannabes out there, so make sure you go to TristarHatsCo.com for the best quality and customer service.
Will do, and I'll be sure to use the promo code HOOKED. That's hooked when I do, to save an additional 10% off. TristarHatsCo.com.
TriStar Hats Co. is a trademark of TriStar Hats Co. LLC. Any use without...
Okay, I want to be real clear. I've been told from my sources all along, and this was kind of a big deal before they hired Venables and they realized they were going to make a coaching change, might they call Josh Heupel, that as long as Stoops is there, that's not going to happen. And I wouldn't be concerned whatsoever if I were Tennessee fans. Now, the other factor, and I know that's home for Josh Heupel theoretically, but he's actually from South Dakota. So it's home in terms of a college. The other thing that I would factor in there before anybody got concerned about Josh Heupel leaving is, would he want to really rebuild a program again? Because that's what's going to happen. You know, and there's a lot of moving parts. The Spire Group did its job for a time, and now that's getting taken over by Learfield Communications. So I'll just look at it pragmatically, aside from me reporting based off sources that I don't think Heupel would have interest in the job as things stands now. But pragmatically, it would not be a good move for Josh Heupel, Caleb.
No, I don't think it would either. I mean, would you want to, with Tennessee, you have the program where you want it, and you're on the cusp of a national title, even if you don't do it this year, and you know the NIL house is in order. Do you want to go to OU where you don't think the NIL house is in order? You're not happy with how you left. I doubt they're going to cut ties with Bob Stoops. I don't think they'll have the nerve to do that. They should, but they're not going to. It's hard for me to see Josh Heupel would say, my loyalty to my alma mater outweighs all of those other things. I would never have any loyalty to an alma mater to outweigh those things. I'm sorry. One of the reasons, people bring up, one of the great ones people bring up, Dave, all the time is Johnny Majors leaving Pitt for Tennessee. Yes, at the time, Pitt was a better program. Tennessee was a disaster. But you and I and Johnny Majors and everybody in the world knew that, it's not like Pitt was going to be a long-term thing. You couldn't keep that thing going.
No, you got a guy named Tony Dorsett, as he was known in college. It turned into Tony Dorsett for some reason. And he was a special player. You had mentioned something to the effect that he stacked the roster in some shape or form.
There were no such thing as scholarship limits. Johnny Majors took advantage, was the only coach to know how to take advantage of this, because Johnny Majors actually always understood NCAA rules very well. So he went and he recruited a class of 115 players his first year at Pitt. That's the class that won the national title.
Yep. Asia Cafe, treat yourself to authentic Asian cuisine, handcrafted from guarded family recipes. AsiaCafe.org, AsiaCafe.org. 5 locations to choose from. They've got the 6-to-1 Brazilian Cocoa Energy Booster Premix Instant White Coffee, Golden Label coffee bag with the Lim family right on it. And they've carried the torch for 3 generations now. They're in Knoxville, Tennessee. The Lim Dynasty Asia Cafe. You'll love it. AsiaCafe.org. Last Look brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. Caleb, where are you on these Lady Vols? Because I think a lot of people were super fired up after an exhibition game against a lowly opponent, and Kim Caldwell, I think her team had 389 steals, if I count correctly. They had a lot of steals. They were up-tempo. They were very good. But now the Lady Vols against MTSU were, they do pick up a big commitment. What do you think? What are your early returns on the Lady Vols and what they've done under Caldwell?
All right, let me start with the game itself. Everybody's excited because they went 15 of 42 from 3. 14 and 19 from the free throw line, and they won 89-75. And for context, they lost to MTSU by 11 last year. MTSU is a very good low-level program. Rick Insell, their head coach, has made the NCAA tournament 2 years in a row and won his conference. Solid program. But I don't know how you are, Dave, but here's one thing I don't do. If a team is not built with a lot of shooters, like, say, Golden State, or do you remember the 2011 Dallas Mavericks that won the NBA Finals, or like Villanova, those teams? If you're not built like those teams, you shouldn't be encouraged because you were red hot from 3 from a game and won, because you're going to have a game where you're not red hot from 3. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and that's kind of the trend of basketball in general, is everybody wants to shoot the 3, and if you're hitting it, you're going to win. The question is, if you don't hit it, what's your response? And I think that's my greatest question for Kim Caldwell moving forward.
I agree. And here's the issue. Now, I think long-term, she's going to want to recruit players that do shoot so well that it won't matter, but there will be somebody on, even if they're off. The issue is right now with this team, you see what she doesn't place emphasis on. The Tennessee Lady Vols had a huge size advantage, Dave. They out-rebounded MTSU 40-31. MTSU could only go 7 deep and only really play 5 starters. Tennessee got outscored in the paint 44-24. Kim Caldwell literally doesn't coach scoring in the paint out of half-court sets. Now, again, if she recruits like Villanova did, or those on the men's side, or some of those other schools, and just gets all athletes that are red-hot shooters, that's not going to matter. I don't think Golden State in the NBA knows how to score from the paint out of a half-court set, do they? I mean, but it doesn't matter. They're loaded with shooters. Who cares? This team's not loaded like that, though. So that's where you saw the major cracks in this game, and they were very clear, because in every other way, Tennessee should have outplayed MTSU. They had forced 22 turnovers. MTSU had 14. I'm sorry. Tennessee had 14. MTSU had 22 turnovers. Tennessee had 13 steals. MTSU was just 15-28 from the free throw line. Tennessee was 14-19. Tennessee was 15-42 from 3. MTSU was just 4 of 12. Dave, I say these stats to you, and you're like, oh, they're playing a lower level team. They should have won by 45, right? And they win by 14. They don't know when the game turns into a half court set. I don't think Tennessee coaches scoring in the paint. And Dave, that's kind of a problem.
Let's talk about the Lady Vols' newest commitment. Last Look brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. We saved the best for last. Look at me, no contacts, no glasses, because I have LASIK vision correction at Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn.
The first step to better vision is to visit ccteyes.com. The information you need is easy to access, and setting an appointment is as simple as clicking the tab. Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn, and Eye Care Optical at ccteyes.com.
All right, Caleb, what do you make of the Lady Vols' newest commitment?
She is a 5-star on ESPN Recruiting. She joins the Paldo twins, Mia and Maya, who committed back in July. This class already looks incredibly, incredibly good. She plays for the Canadian youth national teams most recently. She's averaging 11.9 points, 7.6 rebounds, 3.5 assists, 1.5 blocks. So a very versatile player all around. Super athletic. Again, fits Kim Caldwell's system. She basically is a complete she's at IMG Academy now, which is where you want a player to be because you want them to be able to develop into shooters more than anything. So I think that this is a very, very, very good pickup for them. She's going to be much more of a threat shooting the ball, and more players like her will allow Tennessee to do what I'm talking about. They won't have to worry about their half-court sets. The tempo will be turned up, and they will just be hitting threes all night and reining them in. And I think that's the type of system Kim Caldwell wants to run in the future. Just a team of, basically 5 players that shoot like Caitlin Clark and are athletic like Allen Iverson.
I ask you this poll question. It is up on our YouTube channel now. Who goes deeper in the NCAA tournament? Is it the Vols or the Lady Vols? Caleb, what say you?
It's the Vols. It's definitely the Vols. This Vols team. Darlington Neubert, by the way, was back at practice recently. He's about to step in. That's going to add a whole nother element to their offense. I just said a whole nother day. So if you want to fire me right now, you can, because I hate anybody who says a whole nother, and I can't believe I said that. I'm kidding.
I was told, by the way, and so I want to get this out there, and I don't want to get into specifics, but it's the same thing I said about James Pierce, and that it was through no fault of his own, but had a tragedy he dealt with in the offseason that probably affected his play early in the season. Same thing for Darlington. That it wasn't his fault. He didn't do anything wrong, but that's what I was told, and I don't want to get into specifics. It's a personal issue, but now he didn't light things on fire before that. Okay, I want to be clear. I'm not just defending him, but I'll be honest with you. I think it's the Lady Vols for a couple of different reasons. Now, I know the Lady Vols and the competition in the women's game is more fierce than it's ever been, but still, I think you would agree that it's easier to make the Sweet 16 or the Elite 8 on the women's side still, correct?
Yes, it is.
Not like it used to be. Used to be, if the Lady Vols didn't make the Elite 8, you're like, what happened? In the Pat Summit days. I'm not sold on Chaz Lanier as an outside shooter. Darlington may end up being a great player, but we've already got questions about him. I'm not feeling it with this group right now. And it's very early, and you're talking to somebody that 2 years ago was kind of down on Zakai Ziegler. So I'll admit when I'm wrong, but I watched this Tennessee men's team, and I'm just not feeling it. I'm not feeling the intensity. I think that they knew that with Dalton Connect that he could manufacture some points, and they knew that they could lean on him. I don't know who they lean on now when they have to have points, Caleb, and we think it's Chaz Lanier, but we don't know that yet.
Yeah, Dave, I'm going to break with you.
That's fine.
And it's you're right. There's nobody as clear as Dalton Connect, but there's a lot more options. Put it this way. Last year's team was the Michael Jordan Bulls. Not winning championships, just think about it this way. This year's team is the mid-'80s Celtics teams that you loved. Okay, I'm sorry, but those mid-'80s Celtics teams were better. Michael Jordan was better than anybody on those teams. But how many Larry Bird was the go-to guy, but Dave, you were a fan of those teams. They had like 6 options that they could go to, right? If they needed.
Yeah, I think Kevin McHale was the best back post player of all time. I don't even think it's close. Now, you get him facing the basket, that's a whole different. That's a whole different issue altogether, and couldn't play in probably today's game. Parrish was very good. You had a guy named Ainge, Danny Ainge. It was a great shooter. Suddenly, the guy who passed away, a point guard, slips my mind. But yeah, you're right. And if you want to go early 80s, they had a guy named Bill Walton that was able to play minutes, not as a consistent starter, but was very good. I don't see
and
that.
Cedric Maxwell, don't forget him.
Yeah, I don't see that out of this group. I got to be honest with you.
See, that's what I'm seeing out of this group. Not on the same level. We're doing tiers here. I'm not saying this group is like the mid 80s Celtics. What I'm saying though is there are a lot of options on this team, and there's going to, and Chaz Lanier is going to be the go-to guy, but there's 1,000 other guys who actually can make an impact.
Okay, we'll see. I just think you're discounting Dalton Connect and the effect that he had on this team. He's already starting in the NBA, and he's had a couple of big nights. A big, strong move by you would be going to Work Trucks. All about trucks. Trucks are actually available. Trucks that help you maximize your profits by having the right work vehicle. Now, time is money. The perfect work vehicle doesn't break down, has all the space to carry what you need. That's what Work Trucks is intent on offering, while other dealerships just can't do it. Look at those trucks. Contracting, all about time. Work Truck saves you time with less back and forth trips and trucks that pass the highest standards to be put to work. The process is also quick and easy when choosing a vehicle for work trucks, cargo vans, utility body trucks with an app, how to work bodies installed, pickup trucks of all sizes, and anything special like cranes or dump trucks. Work Truck supplies vehicles to people just like you and get you back on the road tomorrow. No dealership runaround. If you're a contractor, you need to know Work Trucks. That's a fact. Service industry. Remember Work Trucks. Work Trucks carries trucks that your business has to have. You need Work Trucks. Clinton Highway in Knoxville, downtown Birmingham. For the entire inventory, just go to Work Trucks with an X, LLC.com. They'll find a perfect truck, outfit it, make sure it fits your needs to a T. Proud supporters of the Tennessee Vols. Work Trucks with an X, LLC.com. Caleb, when we next visit, we will have a participation/injury report. What is your prediction on what Nico Iamaleava will be?
I think they're going to say probable for now. That could obviously change in 2 days, but they're going to say probable for now because Josh Heupel has been lying to us if it's not probable. Put it that way. If it's not probable, then Josh Heupel saying we expect him to play this year is just a total and ridiculous and utter lie from what he was talking about. So I think they'll say probable, and they're going to see how things go later in the week with whether or not he's healthy.
Okay, I'm not crazy about the word lie. I mean, it's kind of gamesmanship, but I think the gamesmanship will be he's questionable on a Wednesday night, and then he will be probable later in the week, and based off my sources, end up playing. So if you want to call that line, you can. I think it's a little bit of gamesmanship, but that's what I think will happen. We'll have it when it comes out on offthehooksports.com. If you haven't checked out the website, please do so. I wrote a column about how a couple of overachievers in Will Brooks and Cooper Mays have made this a different Tennessee football team. Also, why Dylan Sampson is just the man. I mean, he shouldn't have gone out there and played against Mississippi State in the second half with the ankle issue. He should have sat it out, but he knew that Nico couldn't go. And I would encourage you to check out offthehooksports.com. We'll also have Caleb's piece on 5 balls to watch, which was led by Max Gilbert, who he loves as a kicker more than any man walking the face of the earth.
Dave just hates Max Gilbert. Dave literally tried to break into Max Gilbert's dorm room and shoot him last week. Okay.
Right. That's right. No, I tried to Jim Bob Cooter just to
tried to cuddle him. You tried to
cuddle. Sneaky
cuddle.
cuddle.
And he got rejected, and that's why Dave hates him so much. Is that Max Gilbert wouldn't cuddle him back?
Cuddling, overrated, underrated, Caleb.
Oh my gosh. Oh my! I'm not talking about this.
Underrated. I'm not afraid to show my sensitive side. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Wherever you're listening, be sure and like and subscribe. Leave us a comment if you're on one of those audio-only podcast forums, but know that we'll be on YouTube Live each and every weekday at 10 a.m. For Caleb Calhoun and Dave Hooker, I am Dave Hooker. Allow myself to introduce myself. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's